Morning, everyone. No, this is a really cryptic. I'm going back. Here we go. Okay. So Paul gave me, the small task of just, can you just tell us all about the big trends of 2024? Right? You've got an hour. I thought, well, there's not much going on in the world, is there? So this will be an easy brief. Right? What have we got for an hour? And then when I was preparing this, I thought, you guys probably saw this. This was just about 2 or 3 days ago. Sam Altman said, it's okay because AI is going to do 95% of the work that marketing agencies and creatives do. So I thought it's the perfect time to be talking to a room full of agency people because this is probably how you all feel, right? And it's so easy to meme this, right? And this is kind of the conventional wisdom about, what's happening, right? AI is going to put us all out of a job, we're all doomed. And if it's not AI, it's climate change, right? Because, we sit in this world, like this, I think we can all agree. We sit in this world where, I feel it's my job to look at the world, but I'm sure you all feel it as well, right? The waves of change are kind of crashing all around us. Right? It's not just AI, of course, it's social change, demographic change. We've got technological change, political change. I mean, we've got big elections coming up, right? As The Economist said, it's the world's biggest year ever for democracy, right? Change is all around us, and I think it was that well-known futurist Chrissy Teigen who responded when she saw this image of the Pope last year with a tweet that I just love. She was like, I thought the Pope's puffer jacket was real. Didn't give it a second thought. No way am I surviving the future of technology. Right? And perhaps kind of this is the sense that many of us have. When you sit there, you think, Jesus, like, how do I keep up with everything that I'm meant to be on top of, right? Not just professionally, but just in the world around us, right? The world that you're building for your kids, if you have them, feels pretty overwhelming. So, I'm a reluctant futurist, but I'm hopefully going to give you some seeds of optimism in the next hour. Because, of course, I can't cover everything, right? But what I do want to do in the next hour is to share some ideas that I hope are very useful, but also a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world that helps us navigate through this kind of turbulent world of change. Because I do believe there is a model to thinking about the future, which I'd love to share with you. And look, if you won't take it from me, because you kind of who the hell am I, sitting here running a small trend agency, running a few books. Maybe you'll take it from one of the world's richest men. My slides are going to go on. There we go. Who's built, of course, one of the companies of our generation, Jeff Bezos. And here's this amazing quote, and this was from before the pandemic, before AI. But he was being interviewed on stage at a retail conference, and this journalist was saying, Jeff, paint us a picture of what you're working on. What's the future of retail in 10 years' time? What does it look like? And he stopped her, as you can read. He said, that's fascinating. He said, I always ask this question. What's changing? What are you working on? Drones, facial recognition, automation, Internet of Things. Right? He said, everyone's always obsessed with this. He said, I put it to you, but actually, for me and my leadership team, the far more interesting question is the one that no one ever asks me, which is what's not changing. Because he said, this is what we build our business around. He said, Anderson, we have all these shiny new technologies we're investigating. But he said, we know with absolute certainty that in 10 years' time, no customer is going to come up to me and say, Jeff, love what you're doing at Amazon, but I just wish you had higher prices and slower delivery times. Right? He said, that is never going to happen. So these are the things that we build our business around, right? And for you, the things you build your clients' businesses around. The things that won't change in the next 10 years. Because he said, people who understand people will always win. And of course, this is your superpower. This is the superpower of the people you employ in your teams. Right? This is what creative agencies do really well. People who understand people always win. And the other thing, Bezos went on, he said the great thing about this is you don't have to pay McKinsey hundreds of thousands of dollars and go off for 6 months to study the things that aren't going to change. He said you intuitively know them. Because they're big, basic, fundamental human needs and wants. He said for us, speed, low prices, convenience, right? And we saw that so viscerally. Like, we come out of a pandemic, and what do? We rush to reconnect in person. Was Zoom meetings still the new normal? Were we going to do everything hybrid? I thought we weren't going to have meetings like this, right? But of course, we do, because that ability to break bread with people, right, to do what you did last night, you get on a plane and you come around the world, because that basic human need and want of trust, right, of connection, these are the things, we build up our businesses around, but definitely the things you build your clients' businesses around. So it started kind of, two quite conflicting ideas, right? We say on the one hand, everything's changing, Right? Chrissy Teigen, terrified by what does the future hold? No way am I surviving a future of technology, because we know everything is changing on the one hand. And also, but just focus on the things that don't change. So how do we bridge these two kind of seemingly contradictory parts of this model of thinking about the future? And if you can kind of remember one thing from this presentation, it is that actually, I believe really passionately, and I wrote this in my first book, was that actually the very things that threaten to overwhelm us, the constant barrage of new products, new competitors, new startups that are coming into the marketplace. Every time you sit down at your laptop and you open your inbox, you'll get newsletters filled with these, as I said, new products, new startups coming in, threatening to disrupt the industry. It's actually these very innovations that threaten to overwhelm you that are actually the secret weapon that you can use to help understand where things are going for your clients, customers. And just to kind of, explain why this works. I've written a lot about how I believe we exist in an expectation economy. This was basically the whole of the first book. I'm saving you from having to read the 300 pages that we wrote on this, because I know you're all busy people, right? Is the big idea at the heart of that book is people's expectations are set by their experiences. Right? And often, and the key thing is, you look across industries, that's why I've got all different industries. Nice to see a couple of your clients on here as well, Nordisk. Because typically people's expectations are set by the best in class, and often that happens outside of your industry. Right? And just to take that back, just to paint the picture of it, right? Think back a decade or so ago. You first got in an Uber. Right? You pulled out your phone, you pressed a button, the driver knew where you are, you knew the driver's rating, you could see the car arrive, right? All the things we take for granted now. Right? You get in the car, you can share your arrival time with the person you're meeting, and then at the end of a journey you just walk out. Right? Beautiful kind of information transparent experience. Think back a decade ago, you then walk into, I know we've got a very global room, Wagamama's if you're here in the UK, I don't know, fast casual, Olive Garden, right, whatever, think of a restaurant. You walk into a fast casual restaurant, having just got out of a taxi, you sit down at the table, you're looking at the menu, you've got no idea which dishes are good, really, right, unless you pull out your phone and go on TripAdvisor. You've got no idea whether your waiter's any good, you've got no idea when your food is going to arrive, right? Then you come to pay the bill and try and split the bill with your friends, right? And it's a torturous experience. What happens, of course, is your expectations around seamless digital convenience, that Uber has just raised, they don't sit in a neat box marked transportation or mobility. They start to bleed across, right? Same if you walk into H&M, right, and you're buying clothes, right? Or if you're buying, sitting in a restaurant ordering. Consciously or subconsciously, you see this again and again. Expectations that start in one industry start to filter across into other industries, right? So I believe, as you introduced me, Paul, thanks, teeing me up, right, called myself a reluctant futurist because I don't believe, there's a couple of reasons why I'm a reluctant futurist, right? Number one, firstly, when I go to Dali and I to put in, show me an image of a futurist, right, this is what comes back. And I'm aware of the irony, right? I'm a white guy dressed in black, wearing glasses, right? This is kind of our social, collective, image of a futurist. But of course, right, the future is too important to just outsource to people like myself. I mean, please do for the next 45 minutes, right? But you're working with clients every day, right? It's critical that you have a point of view on the future, that your team engages with the future on a daily basis. But the other reason, as I said, is because I don't believe futurists, the minute you think of futurists, you think of something that's over the hill, right, around the corner, that you almost don't need to worry about today. Whereas again, as I hopefully now demonstrated, the seeds of the future exist in the present today. So I'd urge you not to think of this as futurism, but to think of this as nowism. How can you take insights from the best in class, best innovations that are coming into the marketplace today, see how those are raising people's expectations around the basic human needs and wants that are important to your clients or your clients' customers, and use that as inspiration for your innovation opportunities. So this is what I spent the last few years. I left this trend and innovation agency that I used to run a couple of years ago. I feel incredibly privileged to have had the last 3 years basically speaking to incredible entrepreneurs who are building the future, who are launching startups, who are setting people's expectations. And in a kind of crushing, demonstration of what I'm going to talk about later. You're going to get copies of the book. It's published in the US, although they had a load in the UK, and they're being delivered to my house, despite the fact giving 3 weeks' notice, being delivered to my house this morning in about 45 minutes. So I'll get them couriered over. So I've got a copy of the book for you. You'll be delighted to hear it's designed for people who don't have time to read. It's designed for busy people like yourself. So it's 30 short chapters. Each one takes about 10 or 15 minutes to read, all structured around a what-if question, featuring, just like I'm going to do in the presentation today, featuring an instigator, we call them in the book, someone that is creating a trend today, a business or an individual, an organisation, and we use those instigators to ask questions about what if this became normal? What if this became the mainstream? Because I'm hoping you can demonstrate over the next few moments, as I said again and again, futurism is not about flying cars and sci-fi dreaming. It's about how can you identify innovation opportunities for and with your clients today. Because, kind of just getting close to wrapping up the theory bit at the beginning of this section of my presentation, we just see this again and again. Right? The niche and remarkable quickly becomes normal if it speaks to basic human needs and wants. And I love this example. Right? I don't know how good your eyesight, if you can read. Right? This is the New York Times in April 1968. Right? That jogging was such a bizarre behaviour, right, that there was a full-page article in the New York Times about these people that just went to a park and ran. Right? And if you read that, the first joggers, they got arrested, right? They got stopped by the police. And they got stopped by the police because people couldn't comprehend why someone was just running without a destination. Right? What were you running away from? This was such bizarre behaviour. And of course now, right, we don't think of it as bizarre at all. And think of some of the waves of change around the basic human need and want for wellness, well-being, physical fitness. Right? Again, that was the late 60s, jogging was bizarre. Right? You think back maybe a decade ago, meditation, mindfulness was kind of a little bit, woo, like, this guy, what are they doing? Yoga, and 20 years ago, before that, quantified self, tracking your sleep. These are niche kind of fringe behaviours that if they speak to a basic human need and want can quickly start to become completely normal, completely unremarkable. So, as we go through this presentation, I've got a whole bunch of, I think I've got 50 slides to cover in the next 40 minutes. I'm going to go through really quickly, but what I want you guys to do is when I share these case studies with you of someone kind of doing something a little bit strange, right? Perhaps some of them you may want to dismiss, on first glance. Can you think about how you could respond? Think about how this unlocks a new way of serving an existing basic need or want that's relevant to some of your clients, right, and their customers. I keep on hammering this home. And so, right, just to get us in the frame of mind and the mood to do this, because I'm convinced we're in a room full of reluctant futurists, a room full of nowists here. I want to turn it over to you guys for a few moments, right? What I want you to do, and I know you've all met last night, or many of you, but as Paul said, perhaps you didn't meet the person you're sitting next to today. I just want to give you 2 minutes to have a very simple conversation. We'll take 15 seconds, 20 seconds to introduce yourselves. And then I want you to share with the person next to you a short description. Who's your innovation crush at the moment? Right? It could be a campaign that you wish you'd worked on. Please don't pitch your own business, right? It could be a campaign that you love that you wish you'd worked on, an app that you've downloaded on your phone recently, something that your kids are using that you're really intrigued by. Just share details of could be a brand, could be a campaign, could be a new startup, could be a product that you think is doing something amazing. Right? Again, raising your expectations around what's possible. Okay? Everyone clear on what we're doing? Turn to your neighbours and say, introduce yourself, and just take a minute each way, so 2 minutes in total, to just talk about your respective innovation crushes. Okay? Over to you guys. I'd love to hear some. Who wants to share? Who learnt about a particularly interesting innovation crush?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Go on. What's his divisive figure? What's
everything he thinks about is way over the horizon, but he makes it extremely simple and achievable.
Nice. Yeah. So just inspiring us to do great things, right? Space, electronic cars, electric cars, tunnels.
I didn't know he was a co-founder of OpenAI until the stat.
Until he fell out with them. Yeah. Okay.
But he was one of the original.
But he was one of the, he puts his money where his mouth is, right? Yeah, amazing. Okay, very inspiring. Changes our expectations around what's possible, right, in industry after industry, maybe interplanetary.
Any others? Anyone learn kind of something new that they didn't work familiar with? Yeah, Dan.
My one that I was going to show is one Duolingo, which is an app which is kind of reinventing the way people learn languages. And I thought
Yeah.
it's such an international group. My kids who have been learning Spanish for about 2 years started Duolingo about 6 months ago, and learned more in 6 months than they did in 2 years. And they're like obsessed with taking part, and I think it's just reinventing the way in which you can teach.
Yeah.
What's the name of the app?
Yeah, Duolingo.
Duolingo.
So
Duolingo.
Duolingo. Oh, it came up already, right? Yeah. So yeah, but as you said, changing your expectations around how to learn, how fun it can be. Micro learning. It's bite size. Amazing. So if anyone's learning a language and it isn't on Duolingo, there you go. You've got an app to download on the plane home. Anyone else? That's it.
Khan Academy is another example.
Khan Academy.
Yeah, it's the same, but for math and STEM at all. It's a great app and a great experience.
What's the name again?
Khan Academy.
K-H-A-N.
It's great. There is math and there is like physics and computer programming, and it's all free, and the user experience is very, very good. That's just like the Duolingo one.
Yeah, amazing.
It's a great app.
Anyone else? One more to share? Yeah, cool.
I mean, it's not particularly revolutionary, but it's actually about a connected experience. So I travel quite a bit on the train to and from London. And living in the middle of nowhere, I had to get to the station at least 10 minutes early to buy a ticket, to buy the car parking ticket. And 9 times out of 10, the automated machines didn't work, or there wasn't an assistant there. But actually, they've introduced 2 apps, one for the car park, one for the train. So now I can sit at home, before I go, I can check whether the train's actually working, then book my car park, and then book my train ticket through 2 apps. Now, if those were integrated, that would be great, but the whole experience saves me, and it sounds small, but it's 10 minutes out of my life. But it's also actually the bigger hassle is turning up to the station, because I can go to 2 and finding the train's on running. So this way, there's this sort of online integrated experience that makes my life just that little bit easier. And this is on stage.
Amazing. Okay, so we've heard a lot of expectations being changed, and again, hopefully something to discuss over lunch, right? So if you're starting next to someone you don't know, and you've got loads to talk about, but there's something you can share your innovation crushes. Okay, great. So we're in a room full of not futurists, but nowists. This is going to be a good session. So let's crack on with it. Right, I've got 4, as I said it's on the title slide, non-obvious ideas, or just slightly different ways of thinking about the forces of change that I'm really excited to show you. Some of them from a book, and obviously the world's changing so fast. We launched that a year ago. Some of them are completely new. So the first one I wanted to share with you is this idea of augmented empathy, right, as an opportunity for the year ahead. Right, because, you will have seen online, right, and you've seen when the Vision Pro came out, I love some of the memes, the photos of people, 2 guys in San Francisco, just, having a casual Chinese meal, nothing to see here, just dining with friends, right? And, we keep on hearing about the future of technology being more and more immersive, right? And I'm not 100% sure that is actually the truth, right? I think the future of experiences is more and more immersive. I've got a whole chapter on the book in that. But I think if you actually think about the future of technology, we've gone from desktops where you're chained to the desk to phones where you've kind of got out of the desk to smart watches and then increasingly, I don't know, has anyone here got the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses? The new Facebook, they've done one where you can stream live from Instagram, but they've also got ChatGPT kind of in the lens frame, and the idea is you'll just be able to ask it, what am I looking at? And it will show you, it will explain to you what you're looking at. But I actually think this is probably a future normal that not a huge number of people want, right? Being plugged into technology, getting in the way. And of course, what we, in the kind of conversation around AI that's been bubbling up over the past year or two, a lot of people fall back on this idea that, we're humans, right? Empathy will be what saves us, right? We're all going to be caregivers. And of course, we thought about creativity about 18 months ago, remember, right? And creativity was going to be the last thing to get automated. And then, of course, ChatGPT came along and you asked it to write you a haiku and it spat it out, right? You asked it to write Shakespearean rap lyrics and it spat it out instantly, right? And I think we're seeing the same when it comes to empathy as well. We had this expectation that empathy was going to be a uniquely human skill. And I don't know if any of you saw, this was a few weeks ago. So Google released their Amy chatbot, which was, I think it's advanced medical something exams. It's basically the doctor's consultation exams, right? There's a very formulaic things. Doctors role play with actors, and they released a medical chatbot which would ask, just like a doctor does, questions to help it get to a diagnosis. And they released the results, and they're quite astonishing, right? Perhaps you won't be surprised that the AI was better. I mean, I'll talk you through this graph, it doesn't matter. You won't perhaps be surprised that the AI was better at diagnosing medical conditions than humans, right? It's got infinite information. What was really astonishing, though, was that the actors who were playing the part of patients, these are like professional actors who help doctors study for their exams, they judged the AI. The AI outperformed the human doctors on all the metrics, but they judged the AI as being significantly more empathetic than the human doctors, right? Significantly. I mean, it was the area where it most outperformed, right? On the one hand, this is astonishing, right? If we don't even have empathy, right, what is left for us as people? But, right, I actually take a different view, right? And I think, I want to show you why. Like, this was a double-blind study, and it was run by chatbots, right? As you saw, it was a text chat. Right? And of course, that will be really useful. If you don't have access to a primary care physician, right? If you live in a part of the world where that is not possible, of course, having access to a medical chatbot instantly, low cost, 24/7, is going to be amazing. That will have a job to be done in healthcare. But most patients are not in a double-blind, anonymous study, right? Mediated through chatbot. Like, if you're being broken bad news to you, I believe really passionately you will want to have someone holding your hand, have someone look into your eyes, right? And alongside this, there was an amazing study by, and we do have an American in the room, I think, one or two here, right? So I'll be careful what I say. I love, Americans can get away with things that probably would never fly in Europe. There was this mental health app called Coco, and it's a kind of service where human volunteers give mental health support to people online. And the CEO tweeted, he was like, yeah, we just tried running all the messages with AI. We just turned it to AI for a few thousand messages to see what would happen with these vulnerably mentally ill people. And they said, it was astonishing. People preferred the messages that were written by ChatGPT. Response time obviously collapsed, right? Instant responses, really long, thoughtful messages. But he said the kicker was, patients preferred the messages written by AI right up until the moment they discovered it was written by AI. And then, of course, he said a really interesting, I thought it was a great quote, simulated empathy feels weird. It's empty. Right? And actually, what I believe passionately we're seeing, and we're starting to see this already, right, even in healthcare. So yes, on the one hand, we have these kind of, medical doctors that can kind of diagnose everything, be better than human doctors, can, on some levels, be more empathetic than humans. But of course, that's not the reality of our human experience. Right, and actually what we're seeing is things like this. So this is a company called Abridge. They just raised $30 million. And essentially what it is it's a chatbot companion or a kind of AI companion. The doctor gets the patient's consent, turns it on, it sits there and records the consultation. Right? And at the end of the consultation, it writes up the notes. Right? And it's not fully automated, right? It presents the notes to the doctor and says, do you approve this, right? And so, but it turns a 10-minute task into a 30 seconds if there's no edits, perhaps a 90-second task, right? They save doctors 2 to 3 hours each day. Right? If you go on their website, I mean, they've got this amazing impact report, and they say, we've got all these numbers. They said the thing that really hit home to us is when a doctor said, this has saved my marriage and possibly my life. Right? This has reignited my passion for the medical profession. Right? This is massively alleviating clinician burnout. And the real kicker is that patients prefer the AI-generated notes. Because it's an AI, you have a very formulaic, structured medical version of the notes that is all the clinical information. It gives the patient a layperson's translation of the notes, right, that they can ask questions about. And there is no abbreviations, right? It assumes no knowledge. It assumes, to explain to me like a 5-year-old what's really going on here. So patients prefer the AI version of the notes as well. So I think that's a really interesting example which just encapsulates the future of human-to-human interaction. Right? And again, we see these examples of how we can use AI to increase empathy in sector after sector. So let's jump right into a different context, right? Not serious healthcare consultations. Video gaming. Right? Video games, Call of Duty, many of you will have heard it, it's this kind of war game. They have these voice chat channels. And there's a huge problem for female gamers, right? If you use your voice and you're a female gamer, the statistics show people will essentially, abuse you, bully you, harass you for being female. Huge problem driving women out of the gaming industry. Right? What Activision did last August, they bought this startup called Modulate, and they've been moderating their text chat channels for a number of years. That's easy to do. They haven't been able to monitor their voice chat channels in real time up until now. And what it does, if people start using hate speech, bullying, harassment, it will start pop up a notification saying, whoa, this oversteps the mark. We're going to block this. If you keep on abusing people, you get banned from the game. Right? In the first 4 or 5 months after they launched this, I think in January they produced an update, they've intervened over 2 million times for their game players. Right? Using AI to help humans be more empathetic or to have a higher quality experience. Right? So the question I would leave you to think about is, we hear so much about what are the human skills that we're going to be left with in this world of AI. But I know it's not as simplistic as thinking humans do empathy, just like it wasn't humans do creativity, machines do computation. Right? It will be how can you use AI for and with your clients in the customer experience that they have to increase the quality of human interactions. That's going to be the really exciting area, I think, to think about. So the second big idea I want to show you, I've got 4 ideas. 2 of them are very focused on AI, then we'll move off AI, I promise. Right? The second big topic I want to talk to you and explore with you is this idea of crowd-powered creativity. Right, you will remember from last year this song, right? Many of you, or for those of you who don't remember, this was the kind of moment where the entertainment industry really woke up to the power of the disruption that AI was going to wreak. Because this was this guy who went on TikTok, and I didn't manage to get a screen recording before they pulled it, right? Universal Music pulled it within like 24 hours. But he released this viral song, which was kind of Drake featuring The Weeknd, and it was this completely synthetic hip-hop tune that he released, this guy in his bedroom, right? Sounded just like them, fooled everyone, and people were like, oh shit, right? If you're an artist, where's your IP? Anyone can create songs. And what happened, as I said, Universal Music steamed in there, pulled it from YouTube, pulled it from all the streaming platforms, right? But there was another response that just was fascinating that I wanted you guys to think about, because this was Grimes, who came out and talked about Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk's ex-girlfriend, Grimes. She said, I don't have a record label. I'm not part of this old world where it's all about suppressing creativity. She said, I'm fully independent. I'll tell you what, I'm going to release a platform that synthesizes my voice, and I'm going to encourage my fans to make songs featuring me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the whole business model. If I like a song, I will help you release it. I will put it out under my name, and we'll split the royalties, right? We will split the difference. Like, that is just such an interesting, complete subversion of what could be a seismic threat to the industry. Right? And I don't need to explain to you, okay, what's happening with music, we're seeing move into other creative mediums. Right? So this was actually unauthorized, right? This was a company called Fable Studios. I mean, again, they released this with kind of quite spectacularly insensitive timing. They released this in the middle of the Hollywood writers' strike last year. And they said, we've created an AI that will create South Park episodes from a text prompt, right? So you just go in, you type what you want to see, and you'll create a whole South Park episode, and I've just got a short clip for you. Oh, do we have sound? Is he going to play?
Guys, have you heard about the Screen Actors Guild strike? Yeah, it's all over the news. That sucks. Does that mean there won't be any new shows coming out? Exactly, Stan. And that's where my business idea comes in. I'm glad you asked, Kenny. It's called Queepy, a deepfake streaming service. Wait, what, deepfake? Cartman, that's illegal and unethical. No, it's genius. We take existing shows and movies and just replace the actors with deepfake versions of other famous people. Like imagine Game of Thrones, but with Danny DeVito as Daenerys.
I mean, completely generated by AI, automated. I don't know if anyone's a South Park obsessive, maybe you could tell the difference, but for me as a kind of fairly casual observer, that seemed completely indistinguishable from a traditional South Park episode, right? They're skewering the Hollywood industry, etc. Right? And of course, we've seen what's happening, right? You will have all seen, a few weeks ago, right? OpenAI announcing Sora being able to do, not just kind of basic rudimentary animation like South Park, but complex videos. What does this mean, right? we're seeing, I thought this was a great quote from Scott Belsky, who was the founder of Behance. He's now the chief product officer of Adobe. He had a great piece on this. He said, we are shifting from a world where we were skills constrained, right? The biggest barrier to expressing our creativity was, could you actually manifest that, right? Could you create either the words, right, or the visuals, right, the audio, whatever it was? Could you manifest the idea that you had in your head to a world where we are just imagination constrained? Right? Creativity will be the resource that differentiates us. So you actually have the idea. What are you putting into that prompt box? Right? And I think, again, we've seen, started audio, or it's text, audio, movies, and it's going even further. So don't just mute this. I'll talk over this. This is Roblox, right? You think about where this is heading. So Roblox, for those of you who have kids, you'll be familiar with Roblox, right? It's the gaming platform, 65 million daily active users, 45% of them under 13 years of age. So if you want to see where the future is happening, look to where the kids are spending their time. Right? Roblox announced that they are going to create this AI assistant where, again, does everyone know what Roblox is? For most of you. So the idea is, players can create micro games for other players, right? Kind of basic coding. They've got over 3 million creators on that have created over 5 million micro games for other players. Right? But of course, there's still a barrier to creation. Right? Being able to code even this little racing game or this little capture the flag game, whatever it is that you're creating, was quite complex. Right? Not as complex as coding a full app, but still required a level of technical skill. Now, what they're creating is this chatbot where if you're a player, you just say, I want to create a game, set it in the woods, with some ruins. I want the big baddie to be a bear, polar bear. No, make it a spacesuit. You just type in what you want to see in your game, and it's there, ready to go. Right? Think about just the ability for the younger generation, the expectation of having a creative idea and manifesting it. Right, in the digital world, that distance is collapsing to zero. Right, think about what that will do to people's expectations. But, of course, there are other new scarcities coming in. And I just love this story, right? Many of you will have seen it. I mean, even our international guests, I was amused. Like, this just seems to go completely globally viral. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, this was a kind of immersive experience that this person basically used AI to generate all these fantastical images, these Willy Wonka experiences. They charge people like nearly $50 to come into this experience, right? And it turned out to be a kind of empty warehouse with a bouncy castle, some really tragic actors who looked like they didn't want to be there. They had a script that was terribly written by ChatGPT. The whole thing was a complete disaster, right? And my point with this is, yes, on the one hand, we will have this kind of, blossoming of crowd-powered creativity. But of course, there will be new scarcities, right? The skill of actually delivering something in the real world, like that is still going to be a constraint, right? So yes, on the one hand, barriers to entry collapse. On the other hand, we are saying it's not in the digital world, yes, the blossoming of creativity. Of course, there will still be opportunities, right, or necessities where humans have to step up and deliver things. But I've shown lots of examples of video games, music, media. Just want to zoom out again and think about, the implications of this, because this is where I think this is really interesting. Right? The implications of this, I believe, are really quite profound, because it's a culture of democratizing innovation across the board, not just in the kind of digital sphere. Right? Shell and hackathons and innovation competitions are not a new trend by any sense. Right? We've been writing about them for over a decade. But I thought it was fascinating. Like Shell, they have a kind of renewable energy hackathon every year. They've been running it for 10 years, and of course you can probably be skeptical about their commitments, right, to the decarbonisation. Right? But what's really interesting is in the last 2 years, right, they've seen exponential increase in the number of applications. So this year they had over 5,000 teams propose over 9,000 solutions for this year's challenge, which was about using AI to help manage agricultural waste for energy. Right? Because the barriers to participation are collapsing. You don't have to be such an expert to contribute. So what I would urge you to think about in your own agencies, but also with your clients, is how, in the coming months and years, how will you embrace, how will you engage an AI-empowered crowd to help creativity blossom rather than fight it? Okay. Take a bit of a leap, focus on kind of deep on AI or some of the implications on AI. I want to share with you, this was a chapter from the book, which is probably my favourite chapter in the whole book, because it speaks to, on the one hand, it's about technological change, but it's actually about something far bigger. It's about our expectations and about how that changes the world we live in, specifically relevant to the marketing industry. Because I want to just start with this image. Right? We've grown up, for perhaps the last 40 or 50 years, we've grown up in a culture, in a world that says natural is best. Right? Natural is a status symbol. Natural is the luxury end of the spectrum. And synthetic is kind of a little bit down market, it's mass-produced. But that wasn't always the case, right? Think about post-Second World War, nylons, plastic, these were miracle materials that were going to save us. And the question I want to kind of seed in your head is, what if we're about to go through a similar paradigm shift in our expectations around what is luxury, what is desirable? Right? Because you look at the world of synthetic biology, right? And we're in a really interesting moment. So this is an example, an Israeli example, right? Our Israeli friend. Israel and Singapore are the world's leading markets, most advanced markets, when it comes to cultivated meat. So Israel and Singapore are currently the only countries in the world where you can go and buy lab-grown meat, right? They prefer to call it cultivated meat because lab-grown meat scares people. But meat that is cellularly identical, right? It's not plant-based, right? So it's not some weird kind of concoction of 50 ingredients that you've never heard of, right? Which kind of put people off Beyond and Impossible Burgers. We've seen the struggles that they're going through. But this is about literally growing cellularly identical material, right? In this case, beef. That looks like beef, tastes like beef, that is beef essentially, but doesn't come from a cow, right? Much lower carbon footprint, no use of antibiotics, right? So safer, ethical. No, you're not raising the Amazon rainforest, right? To enjoy your delicious steak, right? So on many metrics, it will outperform for customers. It's a better product, right? If it's the same physical product. So I think this is a really interesting question to ask. And especially when you see startups like this. And I love this example because it just takes us to a place where again, very thought-provoking. Right? Not going to ask, well, I could do a show of hands. Who in here is vegetarian? How many vegetarians do we have? A couple of people. Who in here happily eats foie gras? Okay, so a few people, right? So most of us eat meat, but it's a minority who eat foie gras. Because, right, for all the reasons that we kind of know, it feels like maybe that oversteps our ethical, boundaries, right? We know that that's a pretty horrific experience for the geese to produce foie gras. I mean, it's not like beef, it's great, but, foie gras is particularly bad. But what if you could have lab-grown foie gras? This is a French startup called Gourmet that raised 50 million euros to create synthetic, right, lab-grown, cultivated foie gras. So you can enjoy this kind of rich, indulgent, delicious food that many of us feel slightly uncomfortable eating today, but with zero guilt. And we'll see this start to emerge in industry after industry. Like palm oil. Again, you'll have all heard about the controversies around palm oil. Right? Well, this is the world's first product using it's a company called C16 Biosciences, based in New York, and it creates synthetic palm oil. So instead of your palm oil coming from the Indonesian rainforests, right, and having all the negative impact of that, it's grown in a lab in upstate New York somewhere, right, in a shipping container. And so you can have all of the products, no compromise in quality, same product that you're using today, but without any of the ethical and environmental guilt around it. And again, you see sector after sector starting to see with the emergence of these synthetic, symbio products, symbio materials. This is a startup called Vitro Labs, where, as you can read on the screen behind me, they take some of the cells from the cow. The cow trots off and lives happily ever after in the field, and then they grow sheets of real leather. It's not the kind of vegan leather that's actually just wrapped in plastic and a complete environmental disaster. Real, authentic, high quality, smells like leather, durability of leather, the luxury of leather. The reason why we've used it for 8,000 years, but without the ethical and environmental issues that we all know that comes with that product. So the question I would ask you, and I think this is hugely potentially challenging, for the whole, or it's quite a seismic change for the entire marketing industry, where we have had a generation of reinforcement for people. Natural is best. Natural is the status symbol. Natural is luxury. What if we enter a world where that is no longer the case, and actually synthetic, the fake alternatives, become the luxury product. And so we're really kind of seeing this a little bit in beauty, like hyper-scientific beauty. And of course, what will actually probably happen is the industry will fragment. You'll have clean beauty, which will all be all natural, right? I'm not saying that natural is going to die, but they'll have significant competition. I think it's a really interesting thought experiment to hold in your heads.
That's sort of happening in the diamond industry.
Diamonds, that was one of the examples I cut out, actually.
And
Yeah.
animal fur.
This is completely just, I mean, the real diamond prices have been plummeting over the last couple of years because of the synthetics. That's been going, I mean, 20 years ago, they started sort of developing the
Yeah.
synthetics, but it's become such a acceptable
Yeah.
way so that the real diamond prices are plummeting. It's
Yeah.
quite amazing.
And actually, you can just do some really clever stuff. The instigator that we write about in the book is this company called Sky Diamonds, and they've got it's all marketing basically, but they capture carbon from industrial waste. Have you seen them? And so the idea is we mine carbon from the sky and use it to turn it into your diamond. I mean, how much carbon are they actually mining? Right, it's like an infinitesimal amount. But as a narrative, you're moving from kind of blood diamonds, child labour in the Congo, to like cleaning industrial waste for your diamond. Like the narrative switch there, you've nailed it. I think it's just going to become more and more common in industry after industry, and it's the expectation. If I have that in my diamond, if I have that in my leather, if I have that in my fur, if I have that in my food, where else should I be having fake, enjoying, embracing fake materials?
It seems to me, though, that somewhat like AI, it seems more empathetic until you know it's AI. Like a diamond, most people, I don't know if it's the same with words, but most people that have synthetic diamonds don't admit that it's synthetic.
Well, they don't today.
But in the
Will they?
future,
Will they
I think
in the
it's a branding
future?
issue, though. I think if the brand is, has enough power in it, then I think that really doesn't matter to consumers.
And it depends if you can shift unnatural to be save the planet,
Yeah.
then ultimately that becomes the thing everybody wants. And actually, you can flip it, and you're proving earlier on that you can flip a whole from what's synthetic is great to what's natural is great.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Yeah, I think a generational thing, right? It's very hard.
Especially the next generation.
Generationally,
Yeah.
When you grow, look at cars. A Hummer, right? Went through kind of, is it desirable? Depends on where you live, right? But things change, data symbols change. I think that's what Elon Musk has done, right?
And the reluctance, lots of reasons, quote unquote reasons, not to have an electric car,
Yeah.
which is false objections mostly.
Well, but I think on that, just while we're talking, I think one of the geniuses of Tesla was to compete, on many levels. Yes, it was electric, but he didn't lead with this is an electric car. He led with this is a freaking fast car that you're going to have a great time driving, right? And it just happens to be electric. And I think that's, if you're trying to compete just on the sustainability narrative, that's very limiting, right? If you're going to hit, 3% of the population. 70% of people say they want it, and then 3% of them will actually put their hand in their pocket. I think it's something like data around that. Okay. The final example, a final kind of idea I want to see through your head is, again, just a really fun one, I think, and a really kind of big picture one to leave you with this session. This is what are called kind of open source solutions. And kind of start by introducing this. I've been looking at this trend for a kind of couple of years. If you read Yuval Noah Harari's book *Sapiens*, you will know kind of humanity's superpower, right? What differentiates us is our ability to collaborate, and particularly collaborate at scale. And not to bring everything back to AI, but I was kind of fascinated by at the back end of last year when they were going through this whole circus at OpenAI and Sam Altman was being fired. TED, the TED conference, also released with perfect timing. Ilya Sutskever, this is his co-founder at OpenAI. They released his TED talk about the future, right? Of where is this taking us? Should we be scared? Should we be kind of optimistic? And I thought one of the observations that he had in this TED talk, which I thought was fascinating, was he said, as we get closer and closer to AGI and all-powerful AI, super intelligence, people will actually start to act in unprecedentedly collaborative ways, both for their own self-interest, but also, I would argue, and again, I've been watching this trend for a number of years, what is happening in the world and what is this kind of technological leverage that we are getting, it is enabling us to do more and more, like really small teams having exceptionally global and profound impacts, right? And to take that out of the realm of theory, what I mean by that is examples like this, right? You have a small team of people. DeepMind has less than 800 employees, right? And is anyone familiar with this example? AlphaFold, right? This is what we did. They used AI to model the shape of proteins, right? And in all of kind of human scientific history, we had tracked, I can't see my notes on it, I forget whether it was 20,000 or 200,000 proteins, right? The shape of proteins used to have to be manually, mapped by science, right? Very expensive, very time consuming. They used AI to predict the shape of proteins. They expanded that, as I say, so I can't remember, to 20,000 or 200,000, but they expanded it to 200 million, right? Pretty much overnight. So they exponentially increased the volume of scientific knowledge. The real kicker, and why I want to share this example, is they open source this information, right? If you are a scientific researcher, right, it's not completely open source, but if you're a scientific researcher, you can just sign up online and you get a database of the shape of 200 million proteins. Right? If you read about this, this is like the biggest scientific advance in biology since the double helix and DNA. Right? In the 18 months or so since this has been released, this is accelerating development into the malaria vaccine. People are using it to find enzymes that can eat plastic, cancer treatments. This is astonishing. Right? But you have 800 people who, in the whole company. It was less than that when they created this, right? I believe one of the most exciting things is technology. Technology is increasing, as I said, the human leverage, right? The impact that small super teams can have is increasing exponentially, right? But of course, as I'm sure you'll talk about later in the session, the war for talent, right? Of course, is the biggest number one issue, I'm sure, on all of your agendas, right? And one of the things that I passionately believe, right, is, and you're seeing this in the AI world, right, we spoke about OpenAI. Why did OpenAI brand themselves as OpenAI? Because they thought this was the way to attract the best talent, right? The best talent doesn't want to make shareholders richer, is the truth. They want to work on things that are meaningful. They want to solve really big problems, right? And we're seeing this in the AI space. This is the way to attract top-tier talent, is to say, you're not just going to make, some, Saudi royal family richer from VC investments, right? What you're going to do is you're going to help the scientific community find a cure for cancer. And we're seeing this, right? As I said, this is what I love doing is seeing what's happening in one sector and seeing how else is this happening in other sectors. And I'm seeing this happening in sector after sector. This was an example from Unilever, but just last November, Unilever said, look, we've done the math. The cold chain, the freezer cold chain globally has to be at minus 18 degrees, right? That's just the kind of global standard. That's how you keep things cold. They said, if we could reduce this to minus 12, we would strip 30% of the emissions out of the entire global cold chain, right? So what we're doing is we've worked out and we've found a way to basically change the ingredients, change the recipe of our ice cream so that it still has the same mouthfeel, has the same, just like we were saying with Tesla's, same quality product. Right? No compromising the product, but you don't need to store it as cold, and this will have a massive impact on reducing emissions across the supply chain. But they said, of course, if we're the only people that do this, you can't change anything, right? Because it's just our ice cream, it doesn't change anything. So they said, we will open source this recipe to all other food. We will share the science of how we've done that to all food companies. Right? And so everyone, let's work collectively as an industry to change the profile of the way we store food, frozen food. Right? My contention is think about how motivating that is. That yes, you can say it has to be because there's no competitive differentiation there. But think about what that says to their talent internally. Right? When you work with us, you're working at Unilever, you're working on solving big problems that are industry-wide problems. And again, I just want to say kind of a fun, small example. You can do this on a much smaller scale. It doesn't have to be like, these are obviously hugely ambitious, changing biology, changing the cold freezer system on a global basis. Just a small example, IKEA, they have those, those attachments to connect your drawers to the wall that, no one puts on, right? You've spent 2 hours building the damn thing. The last thing you're going to do is spend another half an hour figuring out how to screw it to your wall. But of course, they've had these scandals of kids being killed when the drawers tip over. So what they did is they've created this system where you can't open all the drawers at the same time, right? If it's not attached to the wall, it has to be attached to the wall for you to be able to open all the drawers. And they said, look, this is an issue of child safety. Again, this is a patent. We're going to register as an open patent. Anyone in the furniture industry, you can use this from us. You know, let's make the industry safer, right? So from kind of big to small. And the final example I wanted to share with you, because I've spoken for a lot, is just a reminder. Like when I was first researching this trend, I thought, you know, we're talking about AI, we're talking about future biology, we're talking about, you know, climate change, very new problems. But I was fascinated I came across this story of this guy called Niels Bohr, and he was the engineer in the late 50s at Volvo who invented the three-point seatbelt. Right? And the reason why every seatbelt in the world looks the same is because Volvo said, look, we are coming into the automobile era right at this moment. This is going to be the AI of their time, right? This is going to be the transformative technology of the next 30, 40 years. We have a brand mission around safety, around helping protect people. We are going to open source this patent, right? We are going to make it so every car manufacturer can use this. And actually, like does anyone work with Scandinavian, Swedish? Do you work with Volvo at all?
We do.
Yes.
Yeah.
You cannot work with, not with Volvo coming from other all agencies.
But apparently, like, if you go to Volvo, right, if you do, Volvo employees, this is still part of their kind of founding brand narrative, right? This is when you are inducted into the Volvo, if you go and work with Volvo, you are told, like, this is how committed we are to our mission, right? You know, we are a company that puts human safety above, narrow short-term profits because, and look at what we've done, our design for the seatbelt is the design for the seatbelt, right? So the question I would urge you to think about is, I think this can be an amazingly powerful, generational initiative, right? Is there something that you can create for and with your clients in the next 12 months that those clients are still talking about in 50 years' time because of the impact it had on the industry? But I mean, that is a challenging thing, like, to take to your clients and say, we're going to work on something, we're going to give it away. But I believe, think about...
What we do every day.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Yeah.
Go back to the Unilever thing is that we work a little bit with Unilever, and we actually had one day sprint workshops with them 2 years ago about this, because they do a lot of, actions to reduce the impact of Unilever. But the problem is the consumers and so also the customers' perception of Unilever is something else. So I would say they are preferring to work with smaller companies that actually doesn't make a great impact. So how can Unilever, in the communication-wise, also drive it, because they are the one who can make a real change. And what they're facing, they actually changed the recipe for one of the biggest products in Sweden. And the reaction from consumers and nutritionists is that you're only doing this for saving money, and there is no single ingredient in this ice cream that should be in the body.
Yeah.
So it's for us, as consultants, it's about, okay, how can they do that without getting, because they are very afraid of to communicate all the good things they're doing, because there's always the risk for the big backslash.
Yeah, and this is the aha moment I had as I've been tracking this trend on some level for a few years. And when I started looking at it, I thought it was a consumer play. And actually, like, it was listening to the OpenAI speech, it hit me that actually I really passionately believe now this is an internal play. This is a talent play. This is not, because as you say, for most brands, like, there is not much upside in telling consumers that you're changing the industry. Like, they don't really care, right? Or they're skeptical. What this is, I think, is an amazing opportunity to speak to your employees, right, around recruitment and retention, to say, if you work with us, as I say, you're not just going to be helping making shareholders rich, you're going to solve some of the world's biggest problems. And I think that is, as powerful a conversation to have as the marketing to consumers. Arguably bigger, right, in this world where small teams have an exponential impact.
I think it's really interesting, because we do a lot of work for DeepMind. You mentioned them there.
Yeah.
DeepMind are a client of ours, and DeepMind is actually Google, but they don't want you to know they're Google. So they set up DeepMind so that you wouldn't confuse those brands and be disorientated. But the first project we ever got brought in on was on protein folding. So I learned a bit about protein
Glad
folding.
I didn't know that before I presented it.
Slightly worrying. But we were brought in because they basically changed the approach to protein folding, and it's the one thing that's going to revolutionise the future of drugs. And they've managed to do it in about an 18-month window, where doctors have been trying for 50 years to solve the problem. and the medical world turned against them. Because the medical world was really annoyed that they had all spent their entire lives trying to fold proteins, and then Google did it in 18 months and went, there you go, it's cool, and they actually, the medical world turned against them, and you kind of go, that's really odd. So we came in from a PR perspective to help them to rebuild the bridges with the medical world and help the medical world, this is about 5 years ago, help the medical world to understand that actually this was theirs and it was a chance for them to do more now. But they were so annoyed. Some of them had put 30, 40 years of their lives into trying to fold proteins, which is what we had to be able to do to make these new drugs, and they couldn't do it. And then Google just went, we did it! 18 months! And they went, get lost, you bastards.
Well, it also puts at risk their
Yeah.
investments and
Yeah.
capital tied up in creating and protected property that they can profit from.
Yeah, so it was really strange that actually from a PR perspective it was about managing, and it's why DeepMind is actually Google. It's their innovation hub, but they don't brand it Google.
And there is a counter example, I guess, in the open source community, especially on AI. Zuckerberg kind of redirected his focus from the metaverse and etc. to build an open AGI, because he needs the talent. He needs researchers and etc. And researchers want to publish the results. So when you are in Google or when you are in OpenAI, which only has the open in name correctly, you cannot publish the result openly. You cannot open source the result of your research, and that is kind of a double thing, because at the same time you are doing something and you are helping people with your research and you are helping yourself with the results of that. So Zuckerberg is kind of focusing more on Meta, and Meta today is one of the, I guess, the most open company about AI and the impact that it has with Llama and other things that they put out to the world is huge, and even bigger in the open source than OpenAI itself, which was founded in that idea.
Another one is Google. Catalog the world's information except how we rank pages.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we don't sell advertising.
Yeah.
Okay, look, clearly we could discuss some of this, but I'm conscious, Paul, you've got an agenda to run, so I will wrap up just really quickly in 2 minutes. Clearly, I just scratched the surface, right? As I said, there's a million things, we didn't even discuss some of the massive things, Ozempic, how's that going to change the world, the rise of Saudi Arabia and rechanging the world's tourism, etc., etc. There's 100 things. What I hope I've given you, though, is, as well as some practical ideas to take to your clients. I should have said, by the way, I'm happy to, the presentation is yours, right? Do distribute it. In the notes to the slide, there's links to the underlying microsite or product or whatever, so please do feel free. My designer hates that I use boring PowerPoint, but I know it's easy for everyone to cut up and reuse, so I hope there was kind of 1 or 2 examples in there for everyone where you thought, this is relevant to a client that we're working with, today. But also I hope I've given you a different way of seeing the world, because we started by saying, we're all constantly overwhelmed by the forces of change, political change, technological change, social change, demographic change, pick a change. But as I said, I really do believe the secret of thinking about how to seize future opportunities, how to spot them and seize them, is to look at the very forces that threaten to overwhelm us, right? Look at the innovations coming into the marketplace, think about how they're raising expectations about the customer basic human need and want, and that will be a great spur for inspiration. Because of course, I'll be honest with you, the only future we can make is the one that we are able to imagine. And with that, I hand over to you guys, because I have the easy job. I just ask lots of questions and show, funny pictures. You guys have the hard job of turning it into winning products and services. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you very much. I hope it was, look forward to hearing what you make from it. So thank you.